You ever have one of those days where, things are going pretty well, but then just one tiny thing goes wrong, and suddenly your whole world feels like it's just fallen apart? It's the super frustrating feeling we all get, and today we're going to get to the bottom of why it happens, and more importantly, what you can actually do about it. Okay, so let's just dive right in. This is the big question, right? You could have 100 good things happen in a day, but that one little critique, that one tiny setback, it just hijacks your entire mood. How does it have so much power over us? Well, the answer is probably not what you think.
To really get this, we have to first identify the real culprit behind all that unhappiness. And here's a hint. It's almost never the thing that happened on the outside. It's something happening entirely inside our own heads.
The source material for this actually calls this a kind of happiness blindness. Think about it. We're surrounded by good stuff, or even just neutral, perfectly fine stuff, but our brain gets laser focused on that one negative thing. And it's like a drop of black dye in a glass of water. It just colors everything else, making us totally blind to the good.
So, this is the crucial point. Right here. There is a huge difference between what actually happens, the reality, and the story we tell ourselves about what happens. The real event? It might be small, it's objective, it's usually manageable. But the story? Oh, the story. That's where the real trouble begins. It's that internal monologue that just cranks up the pain to a whole new level.
And you know what? This runaway internal monologue, this story, it actually has a name. And just giving it a name is the very first step to taming it. The source material we're looking at today calls it Mōnen.
So Mōnen, that's spelled M-O-N-E-N, is a Japanese term for this runaway story. It's not just regular thinking, no. It's a full-blown narrative that your mind cooks up, often with zero real evidence. And the script almost always stars the same characters: anxiety, anger, or some really harsh self-criticism. It's like having a little drama director living in your head, and they love a tragedy. So how do we even tell the difference between what's real and what's Mōnen? Let's look at a super clear example of Mōnen in action, just to see how it can warp a simple, everyday thing into an absolute catastrophe.
Okay, here's the reality. That's it, a simple fact. Your boss pointed out a small mistake, maybe suggested a different way to do something. Objectively, this is a minor, totally neutral event. It happens to literally everyone. But then, Mōnen gets a hold of the script. And look at what Mōnen does with that one simple fact. It doesn't just react, it builds an entire universe of disaster around it. It makes this insane leap from a minor correction straight to "my career is over." Notice something? None of these conclusions are based on any real evidence. They're pure speculation, a total worst-case scenario story.
And this gets us right to the core of it all. The anxiety you feel, the stress, that sense of dread, it isn't coming from your boss's comment. It's coming from the unproven, catastrophic story that Mōnen is screaming in your mind. We end up reacting to the fiction, not the fact.
Now, here's the good news. Mōnen, for all its creative drama, is actually incredibly predictable. It tends to use the same old destructive storytelling tricks over and over again. And if we can learn to spot these patterns, well, we can start to take their power away.
Let's take a look at some of Mōnen's greatest hits, shall we? You've got all or nothing thinking, where one little mistake means you're a complete failure. Or how about negative fortune telling, where you're just sure things will end badly? Maybe you're a fan of magnifying the past, just replaying regrets on a loop. Or you think you're a mind reader and you know everyone's judging you. And of course the classic, unfair comparisons, where you always come up short. Sound familiar? These things feel so true, but they're really just bad habits of thought.
So, the most important thing to remember is this. When those thoughts are running wild in your head, you've stopped being an observer of reality. You've become an audience member for a really poorly written, overly dramatic play that your mind is staged just for you.
So what on earth do we do? How do we stop the show? This brings us to the most important part of our whole chat today, the solution. And it's powerful, but also surprisingly simple.
But first, let's talk about what doesn't work. Our natural instinct is to fight back, right? We argue with the thoughts, we try to push them away, we try to force ourselves to stop. We think, I just have to stop thinking this way. But let me tell you, this is a trap.
It's that classic pink elephant problem. If I tell you right now, whatever you do, do not think about a pink elephant, what's the very first thing that pops into your head? Yep, exactly. Trying to suppress a thought with brute force just gives it more energy and more focus. So here's the correct way to handle it.
It's not about fighting. It's about noticing. The moment you feel that familiar spiral of anxiety or self-criticism starting up, you don't engage, you don't argue with it. You just take a mental step back and you label it. You just calmly say to yourself, ah, there it is. My Mōnen is starting its story again.
This simple act of just labeling it, it's incredibly powerful. Why? Because by noticing the Mōnen, you separate yourself from it. All of a sudden, you're not the main character trapped in the story anymore. You become the one who is watching the story. And that tiny bit of distance, that's everything. It yanks the emotional charge right out of the thought and puts the power back in your hands.
And this is the final crucial thing to get. Mōnen feels so personal. It feels true. It feels like it's us. But it isn't. It's just a deeply ingrained mental habit, kind of like cracking your knuckles or biting your nails. And just like any other habit, once you become aware of it, you can learn to manage it.
So, I'll just leave you with this question. As you go about your day, just try to pay a little attention. When that familiar feeling of being overwhelmed or anxious pops up, take a breath. Don't fight it. Just notice it. And ask yourself, what story is my Mōnen telling me right now? And is it actually true?